Now, on to some property-related matters. The number of residential rental properties standing vacant has increased from a low of 6.92% in the third quarter of 2022 to 8.13% in the fourth quarter of 2022. And this is according to the TPN Credit Bureau Tenant survey, which also specializes in the property market. But to tell us more on the determining factors behind this, I'm now joined by TPN Credit Bureau Sales and Marketing Executive, there's Waldo Marcus this morning. Waldo, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. I suppose that's the first question, and this for property investors. What would you attribute this increase to?
Good morning, Tumelo. Well, this increase is traditionally we see it in quarter four that there's a bit of an increase when it comes to residential vacancies. And we conduct this survey nationally. Very interesting what we've seen this time around is that Western Cape continues to decrease its vacancy rate, as well as KwaZulu-Natal. But considering we've had the floods and the riots, we would expect that the vacancies would actually increase. However, we've seen this decreasing. But overall, I think the highlight of the survey is that the residential rental market has been performing relatively well and has recovered to pre-COVID levels. Although we've seen a slowdown in supply, demand has definitely picked up. Now, sitting at 8.13% is slightly higher than we had the previous quarter, but it's still an improvement very similar to what we've last seen to like quarter one of 2021 and 2019.
When it comes to the issue around the cost of living in South Africa at the moment, I mean, how does that contribute to more on the lower end of the market seeing that increase?
So we've seen the rental properties below 7,000, which is the lower end of the market. Those vacancies have continued to increase. Those paying below 3,000 Rand a month, they have seen the sharpest increase to about 12.2%. Now, the higher end of the market, those paying 7,000 or more, they've continued seeing a decrease in the number of residential units standing vacant. That sweet spot in the market segment that's performing the best. And we're not just looking at vacancies, we're also looking at various other market indicators. Are those paying rental between 7,000 and 12,000 Rand a month? Also considering that we've seen the way property is consumed, we have multi-family, multi-generational properties becoming more in demand as people would rather share a property with a higher rental, but seeing that they share the cost, the per person cost reduces. So we've seen that trend continuing, and we see that is what's pushing those specific rental bracket vacancies down nationally.
And because you did mention earlier on, Waldo, that this is more of a national survey that you've conducted, let's break it down perhaps per province with Gauteng, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and the Western Cape showing some data and some results there. How would you compare the four provinces?
So if we look at the Eastern Cape, they've really seen an increase and a spike in the number of vacant units. They're sitting at just over 17%. Gauteng is sitting at just under 11%. Then we've got the Western Cape, which is the best performing. They're sitting at 2.13%. And then KwaZulu-Natal, coming from a very, very high base, have dropped down to 3.26%. We expect KwaZulu-Natal to see an increase in vacancies, especially in quarter 1 and 2 of this year, while we expect the Western Cape to kind of maintain that 2 to 3% vacancy rate. Gauteng, very interestingly, has been a very sustainable recovery. Although slow, it has been sustainable. So we've seen that there is a decrease in vacancies overall, if you look at on year as demand increases. However, supply has remained relatively stagnant. And that's what we're seeing, that there's a bit of an improvement in the Gauteng area.
So when you speak to some of the respondents and tenants in this context, what are some of the other factors, obviously despite the price, what are some of the factors that they do consider when looking for rental property?
So we combined this specific vacancy survey results that we published. We also conduct a national tenant survey. And the survey, we ask specific questions. So what is the reason for renting, not buying? What is the most important factor when you're looking at renting? And what we've seen is why consumers are renting. 54% of the respondents indicated it is due to affordability. Next to that is 13.34% indicated that, hang on, we want to be able to move, and we want to be able to move around. So there is that flexibility. And then 13% indicated that we have impaired credit records. So past behavior has impacted on their ability to obtain bonds to purchase. We've also have factors such as, making sure security is right at the top of the list, especially the higher rental brackets. They've really said that, hang on, it is very important for us to ensure that my area that I'm renting in is secure and safe. And then we also look at the various age groups. The lower the age group, sitting from 18 to 39, again, affordability is very important. Mobility is very important. And then if we go to the 60 age group or more, saying that they really don't want to incur more debt right now, which is understandable, seeing that they're close to taking retirement. And another interesting factor is political uncertainty. And therefore, they're not quite ready to invest for long term in a property and rather rent.
That's interesting. I think quite insightful for property investors, Waldo. But also when we look at the current energy crisis, anything that perhaps respondents had to say on backup water supply or even alternative energy sources?
So alternative energy sources is, of course, in the forefront, and there's a lot of movement in the markets of obtaining solar. We have seen commercial banks stepping up and allowing gearing for this type of installments. But we have to raise an early red flag, and that is in regards to water supply. Currently, we sit in an energy crisis, and it's going to be very interesting to see the results from the poll that eNCA is running around being looking at stage 2 or 3, being grateful for that. But of course, that impacts a large majority of the economically active individuals. It's putting huge strain on households, not just in terms of not being able to function day to day, but there's this additional expense, be it in the form of solar, be it in the form of backup batteries, and now the installation of solar, which that kind of money would have gone into other parts of potentially property purchases as an investment. Water, on the other hand, is an early red flag that we raise with our clients and saying, please prepare for this, as it is going to be different being in a sectional title, being part of a homeowners association. How do you install these water tanks? How do you ensure that you have sufficient water supply going forward? Because we've identified that as one of our next big challenges that we could potentially face if we don't act now.
Well, thank you so much, Waldo, for speaking to us about this. Quite insightful. This survey is. If you haven't gotten your hands on it, please do read up on it. If you are a tenant, if you're a homeowner, very insightful to see, of course, these numbers, judging from the third quarter of 2022 all the way to the fourth quarter of the very same year. All our thanks to TPN Credit as sales executive and marketing executive, Waldo Marcus, for your time.